This is Alex.
Hello.
He's an incredibly talented photographer and he runs a YouTube channel called Decaffeinated Photography. And the other day, knowing that I'd never be the better photographer between us, I decided to challenge him to an edit off, so to say. He politely accepted my challenge, and so he chose 4 pictures he's taken recently. I chose 4 myself, and these were the results. Beginning with this lovely picture that I took of my sister at the beach.
This was my favorite image to edit in the whole thing.
Oh, lovely. We're gonna start with the best, your favorite.
And it's all downhill from here. Yeah, exactly. All right, so this was what happened after I quickly edited in Lightroom. I just added a few touches to the image and then I sent it off to Photoshop. The amount of stuff that you can do in this program is, it's never ending. And I don't know if you're familiar with gradient maps in Photoshop. It essentially brings out the luminosity in the skin and in the highlights here. So, but if you can just see as I'm clicking off and on that one, the way it changes. And so I've left the lips, eyes, and nose out of that one, and then I've chucked another one on top. I've just added a simple curves layer to add a little bit of catch light in the eyes. And I actually contemplated just leaving the eyes because there's something about, I don't know if I necessarily like touching eyes all the time, but I thought it would add a bit of an extra dimension to the image. Then I added a bit of a gradient. It just adds a bit more of drama around her face.
I found it very interesting how you did the skin tones.
That was something that I tossed up between, I literally, when I was editing it, I had them both side by side. I had one warmer and one this tone. I went with my gut and I just thought this one looked better. So yeah, I'd be keen to see what you came up with this edit. It'd be interesting to see.
So here's mine.
Wow.
Speaking of color.
Okay. Right.
So basically it's a preset of mine, and then I went in and just did some subtle adjustments. Typically for a black and white, I'll then go into the black and white mix panel and adjust stuff. But for this image, there was such a smooth tone through her skin. It was very consistent that I felt happy with just making it black and white. Then we moved on to Alex's first image, which was a beautiful view of a sunset from a rooftop car park. What do you think?
The car was bottom left corner.
Yes. So what I did, I went into Photoshop, and my favorite tool by far, the tool that I'm most familiar with, most adept with, is content aware fill. Essentially, this is the image you had. Now, I like a 4:3 image. This isn't exactly 4:3, but it's more in that realm. So content aware did this.
Yeah.
You know, it's stuffed up as it does. It's stuffed up here. I don't know what's happening here. You know, it's a bit of a mess, content aware fill. It did the sky perfectly though, if you look at that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
This is the work I did. Just sort of making it look a bit natural. But colors wise, if you look at my first file, my before and after, I did barely any color change really.
That was not something I was expecting again, but fair play to you.
I just added a whole extra part to the image.
Yeah.
Just made it more chunky.
In comparison, honing in on the really good film simulations that Fuji does, I tossed up with this one between the Velvia, which is the vivid preset, and Astia, which is the soft preset. I don't know if you really pay attention to the clipping. You know, it's open to interpretation whether highlight and shadow clipping, I would leave you with a good photo. So if a professional were to review your photo, they would say that is a poor quality photo because of its clipping. But for this image, you see all that silhouette. I thought it you know, the whole area there is there's not much detail. So if we have a look at the before and after, there is a bit of a difference in the vibrance there.
Totally.
But I don't think I've done much. I think it's the sky. It's done most of the work here. If I were to be critical of my edits, I would just say it just looks a little fake because of the vividness of the vibrance. So that'd be the one thing I'd say. But yeah, that was that one.
After that was a picture that I took of a waterfall.
I don't want to give away my secret too much here, but I live and breathe the vintage 07 filter in Lightroom. Yeah, there's a before and after. My main concern was the top right corner of the image was a little bit hard to work with. The whites in the water were so tricky because I wasn't sure whether to like bring them down so you get the details. If you bring it down too much, it just looks gray and the water doesn't look that color. So I went with a bit of a green warm tone. Something I've been doing a lot lately is split toning. I don't know if you do a lot of split toning.
I do.
Split toning is my best friend. There's this Twitter account called Cinema Palettes, and they put out color palettes from scenes in movies, depending on the vibe that I'm feeling. I have these open and it's just colors, right? And I get the split toning eyedropper and I drag it across to a color that I want to try and see how it works in the image. I don't know what you think of this image. I'm curious to see how you went with it, and I'm sure it wouldn't be...
Yeah, well, it's not at all how I visualize it, and you'll see that by my edit. So I went in and I went moody with this image. This is my curve. So I've set my darkest dark to be 6.7%. So nothing gets crushed down. And I really like it when it doesn't crush down, because crush down to me just feels a bit too much, so to say. But here I let the highlights almost blow out. They don't actually blow out, as you can see, because then I've gone unlimited, but it has the ability to blow out.
Look, it's a photo of a waterfall. Do you think, how much variation could you really think there would be in a photo of a waterfall?
You could go black and white grain.
Yeah, I can see that you like your grain. Your grain's very, yeah, it pops up. Me too. I love my grain.
But with this one, I'd say I did add grain.
Yeah, you definitely added grain.
Very subtle little bit of grain. Because the 5D, I don't want to say this, but I do. It's got a kind of filmic grain to it, and it's noise.
Controversial, okay.
It's a strange one.
Digital cameras these days, they've definitely come a long way, so I agree with what you're saying.
Alex's second image was then this quaint little lovely image of his grandmother. Now this one, see, very interesting. It's such a wide dynamic range. You literally have white lit up by the sun, and you've got a portrait in shadow. Yeah. Yep. That's a lot of dynamic range.
There's a lot.
In my opinion. So I went with a mutated S-curve here. And I did what I typically do, where I don't let my blacks be too dark or my whites be too bright. It's kind of a portrait vibe. Colors are different, but to me, it's got this portrait vibe to it, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, you can say a portrait vibe, but I think film shooters won't be happy because they don't like digital, but...
I don't know.
No,
that's how I felt. How did you edit this one?
My favorite thing about this image with her is the glint in her eye, without a doubt.
Yeah, the eyes in this photograph are absolutely everything.
It makes it, and it almost looks like it's a surreal image. I have gone with the vintage filter. I have...
As ever.
It's with me all the time. So I probably mess around with the temperature. Highlights all the way down, obviously. I haven't touched the tone curve. Yeah, look, this was quite a basic little edit for me, but I think sometimes that is the best way to go about it.
Following that was one of my pictures again, which was just a lovely one at the beach. Very typical of me, of a rock.
All I think about when I see this photo, the first thing that came to mind, some sort of dystopian Mad Max world. So if we look at the before and after, obviously it doesn't take into consideration the crop that I've done. I just had to go for the Mad Max feel, and I messed around with some split toning. There was already a hazy look in there, and I did mess around with the clarity slider. I do like to put that to my advantage. I didn't want to go too far because then it just looked a bit stupid.
Interesting.
I'm keen to see
what very atomic with it.
Yeah, exactly.
I went black and white.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I also went
interesting
4:3. I love 4:3. I love the balance of the composition, the way it sort of, especially in a portrait, as with that first image, it sort of wraps around the individual and gives them like, it's a nice warm hug, the way it contains.
That's so interesting to me,
subject.
How we have these fascinations with formats. And for me personally, I rate the 1x1. I just rate the square format.
I don't like 1x1 because it reminds me of Instagram a good 8 years ago.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I guess I've been a little influenced by my TLR, and I find it so interesting that different people have different preferences for formats and stuff like that.
The third image that Alex gave was another one of his grandmother, though this time dressed in kind of streetwear-ish scenarios. With this photograph, it is so much about the eyes.
Yeah.
And you've got that clinically perfect catch light there. I had a big struggle with this tonally, and then I've gone effectively from a quite flat lighting that you got to this.
That's unreal. You've really...
Because these are all graduated filters. All of these are darkening, and it's a way of creating straight lines that are curved. And then I've got this to create this shadow here, as you can see. This is my mask overlay.
That's unreal.
It's big important.
You've put a lot of stuff into that image.
It's very subtle what it does, but once I've applied it all around, it's very strong.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, that's what I did here. What did you do?
Now, my edit, there's a bit of a green-yellow vibe going on. Not something that I ever thought that I'd be gravitating towards. So I'm pretty sure I started in Lightroom. I upped the shadows. I chucked on the classic chrome preset. I haven't touched the tone curve. I've done the split toning. So it's like that weird gold green that remains in there. Green. The sharpening's the same. So that's how I brought it in from Lightroom. You chuck on the vibrance. So automatically...
Vibrance changes everything.
That's like quite cooler. The gradient map, it's very subtle. Because beforehand, it's a bit too contrasty. You chuck that in, it kind of adds a bit of a 3D dimension there. Again, the curves layer does it one more time. You get the gradient fill. I really like this. What I've done is I've gone in and I dropped on the pink of the jumper that I'm wearing right now. I've gone in and I dropped on that and added it in. The final curves adjustment actually brings it all back down to normal. So if you left it like that, you're thinking, who's this lunatic and what's he done with the edit? But the last one kind of brings it back down.
For my final image, I chose this very heavily underexposed one just to challenge Alex and see what he'd come up with.
I don't know if you've seen Shutter Island.
No, I haven't.
I think of Shutter Island when I see this image. I have gone up almost 3.5 stops there in exposure. I've upped the contrast, messed around with the white balance.
This is a good one to explore how noise works on the 5D, which we've been talking about.
It really is. It really is. I've definitely added in some grain here. Not a crazy amount of grain, just left the size and roughness a little bit up there. And I've also gone for a vignette to give that look again. I like my vignettes. Again, the split toning as well. I don't think you like these colors that I'm going for are quite prevalent.
You've been going for every image.
Yeah. Well, how did you go? What was your edit?
Editing this was just slapping on a preset, bringing it up. I brought it up, nearly 2 stops, not 3 stops. I wasn't as dramatic as you, but it was that. It was very simple. Like, I can't help but look at the patterns in this. You have a style in a way that you're playing with at the moment of that warm green, and I have a black and white that I love, which is a black and white grain, so to say. But more to that, this is high contrast, but low contrast at the same time. I'd say that's my kind of warm green equivalent.
Okay.
Look at these blacks. They're not quite crushed, so it doesn't feel too high contrast. And here to here,
it's a bit subdued.
It is it's a high contrast moment.
Yeah.
But it's a low contrast feel. And finally, for Alex's last image, he chose a dark, eerie shot of a basketball court. So I sought to naturalize the sky because I felt that was a bit weird.
Yeah.
I went all through the HSL and went absolutely crazy. Look at this saturation.
Yeah, oh my god, you did.
Also, you may notice that I've taken out every highlight that there was appearing behind these trees. Everywhere there's a highlight, here, it's all gone. You
definitely made some changes there. I like what you've done.
And I've covered up this hole with the clone heel brush.
Yeah.
I went in and I filled in these holes.
That's awesome.
I did 2 graduated masks. One here that's actually adding like a little purple fill into the trees, and one here to sort of make the floor darker.
Okay.
And yeah, you'll see here, I had like a little idea of, say, a streetlight effect coming into these trees.
Yeah.
This backboard was just a bit too bright. So I worked a while to sort of subdue it down, mostly with painting, with my brush mask.
Yep, I like what you've done here. Yeah. So this is my edit of the same scene.
Wow, that's very stylized, Alex.
Look, I know you got rid of the purple sky. I kind of played with the purple sky. And
oh, really?
I kind of brought that a bit more into the image. So I did quite a bit of stuff with this one. I left the tone curve and split toning. Here we go, blue and purple. So the purple in the shadows is from the clouds that I've picked that one out. I have added a lot of grain in this one as well. This edit, again, quite experimental. Definitely something I would post.
Stylized.
Definitely something I would post on my Instagram. But yeah, I was happy with this edit.
Wow.
Yeah, so there you go.
Now, I know I initially posed this video as a competition between Alex and I, but it wasn't really anything like that at all, unless...
Hey, how you going?
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Who won this video?
Who won this video? Oh, it would have to be both of us.
Yeah, actually, you know, that's pretty fair.
We've looked at these images in different ways and come out with different outcomes. Oh, I think it just shows you there's no right or wrong. It's just
as Nike says, just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
Is this how I'm gonna end my video? Oh god.
There's no right or wrong. Just do it.
So yeah, I suppose that's the cheesy note that we end this video on. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it at all, give it a thumbs up and, you know, smash notification bell, subscribe, do everything you want to do if you want to see more videos. And you can follow Alex on his Instagram, which is @decafphotog, right?
Yeah, decafphotog, or otherwise known as decafphotog.
See more of, yeah, photog. Yeah, I can't. That's not how I've ever understood it. I've always understood it as photog. Also, I almost forgot to mention, but if you want to edit any of the RAWs that Alex and I edited in this video, there's a link down below. It's my website, it's on my blog, and there's a way to download each and every RAW file, as well as uploads of the JPEGs of Alex and mine's edits. I'll have that stuff linked below. Also on these card thingies that will appear on the screen. So yeah, click on them, and I'll see you next week.
I feel like there's in a certain sense that, like, I shouldn't be in here. Like, this is blasphemy. I should not be allowed in here, but for some reason I am.